The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, a new rendering based on the Fuli translation of 1742 by George W. Crystal. Book 11. These are the characteristics of the rational soul. It beholds itself. It regulates itself in every part. It fashions itself as it wills. The fruit it bears itself enjoys, whereas the products of plants and of the lower animals are enjoyed by others. It reaches its individual end, wheresoever the close of life may overtake it. In a dance or an actor's part, any interruption spoils the completeness of the whole action, but not so with the rational soul. At whatever point in its action, or wheresoever it is overtaken by death, it makes its part complete and all sufficient, so that it can say, I have received what is mine. Also, it ranges through the whole universe and the void around it, and discerns its plan. It stretches forth into limitless eternity, and grasps the periodical regeneration of all things, seeing and comprehending that those who come after us will see nothing new, and that those that went before saw no more than we have seen. Nay, a man of 40, of any tolerable understanding, has, because of the uniformity of things, seen all that has been or will be in a manner. Characteristic of the rational soul also are the following: love to all around us, truth, modesty, and respect for itself above all other things, which is characteristic also of the general law. Thus, there is no discordance between right reason and the reason of justice. You will think little of a pleasing song, a dance, or a gymnastic display if you analyze the melody into its separate notes and ask yourself regarding each, does this impress me? You will blush to own it, and so also if you analyze the dance into its single motions and postures, and if you similarly treat the gymnastic display. In general, then, except as regards virtue and virtuous action, remember to recur to the constituent parts of things, and by dissecting, to despise them, and transfer this practice to life as a whole. How happy is the soul that stands ready to part from the body when it must, and either to be extinguished, or to be scattered, or to survive. But let this readiness arise from individual judgment, not from mere obstinacy as with the Christians, but deliberately, with dignity, and with no affected air of tragedy, so that others may be led to a like disposition. Have I done anything for the common good? Is not this itself my advantage? Let this thought be ever with you, and desist not. What is your art? Well-doing. And how else can this come than from general principles that are sound regarding nature as a whole and the constitution of man in particular? First of all, tragedy was introduced to remind us that certain events happen and are fated to happen as they do, and to teach us that what entertains us on the stage should not grieve us on the greater stage of the world. You see that such things must be accomplished, and that even they bore them who cried aloud, O Kithaeron! Our dramatic poets have said some excellent things, especially the following: Me and my children, if the gods neglect, it is for some good reason. And again, vain is all anger at external things, and to reap our life like ears of ripened corn, and the like. And after tragedy came the old comedy, using a schoolmaster's freedom of speech, and employing plain language with great profit to inculcate the duty of humility. To this end, Diogenes used a method much the same. Next, consider the nature of the middle comedy, and lastly, for what purpose the new was introduced, which gradually degenerated into the mere ingenuity of artificial mimicry. It is well known that some useful things were said by the new comic writers, but what useful end had they in view in all their accumulated poetry and playmaking? How manifest it is that no other course of life was more adapted to the practice of philosophy than that which now is yours. A branch cut off from its adjacent branch must necessarily be severed from the whole tree. Even so, a man, parted from any fellow man, has fallen away from the whole social community. Now, a branch is cut off by some external agency, but a man by his own action separates himself from his neighbor by hatred and aversion, unaware that he has thus torn himself away from the universal polity. Yet there is always given us the good gift of Zeus, who founded the great community, whereby it is in our power to be re-engrafted into our kind, and to become once more natural parts, completing the whole. Yet the frequent happening of such separations makes the reunion and restoration of the separated member more and more difficult. And, in general, a branch which has grown from the first upon a tree, and remained a living part of it, is not like one which has been cut and re-engrafted. As the gardeners would say, they are of the same growth, but of different persuasion. As those who oppose you in the path of right reason have no power to divert you from sane action, So let them not turn you away from amenity towards themselves. Be watchful alike to persist in stable judgment and action, and in meekness towards those who would hinder or otherwise molest you. It is equally weak to grow angry with them, or to desist from action and submit to defeat. Both are equally deserters, he who runs away, and he who refuses to stand by friend and kinsman. In truth, nature cannot be inferior to art. The arts are but imitations of nature. If this be so, that nature which is the most perfect and comprehensive of all cannot be inferior to the best artistic skill. Now, all arts use inferior material for higher purposes. So also then does universal nature. Hence the origin of justice, from which again the other virtues spring. Justice cannot be preserved if we are solicitous about things indifferent, if we are easily deceived, rash, and changeable. If those things, the pursuit and avoidance of which trouble you, come not to you, but, as it happens, you go to them, then let your judgment be at peace concerning them. They will remain motionless, and you will no more be seen pursuing or avoiding them. The sphere of the soul attains to perfect shape when it neither expands to what is without, nor contracts upon what is within, neither wrinkles nor collapses, but shines with a radiance whereby it discerns the truth of all things, both outside of itself and within. Does any man condemn me? Let him look to that, and let me look to it that I be found doing or saying nothing worthy of his contempt. Does anyone hate me? That is his affair. I shall be kind and good-natured to everyone, and ready to show his mistake to him that hates me, not in order to upbraid him, or to make a show of my patience, but from genuine goodness, like Phocion, if he indeed was sincere. Your inward character should be such that the gods may see you neither angry nor repining at anything. What evil is it for you now to act according to your nature, and to accept now what is seasonable to the nature of the universe? You, a man appointed to do some service for the common good. Although they despise, yet they flatter one another. Although they desire to overtop you, yet they cringe to one another. How rotten and insincere is his profession who says, I mean to deal straightforwardly with you. What are you doing, man? There is no need for such a preface. It will appear of itself. Such a profession should be written clearly on your forehead. A man's character should shine forth clearly from his eyes, as the beloved sees that he is so in the glances of those that love him. The straightforward, good man should be like one of the rank odor who can be recognized by the passer-by as soon as he approaches, whether he wants to or not. The ostentation of straightforwardness is the knife under the cloak. Nothing is baser than wolf friendship. Shun it above all things. The good, straightforward, kindly man bears all these qualities in his eyes and is not to be mistaken. To live the best life is within the power of the soul, if it be indifferent to indifferent things. And it will be indifferent if it looks on all such things, severally and wholly, with discrimination, mindful that not one of them can impose upon us an opinion concerning itself, or can come of itself to us. Things outside of us stand motionless, and it is we that form opinions about them within, and, as it were, write these opinions upon our hearts. We may avoid so writing them, or, if one has crept in unawares, we may instantly blot it out. 'Tis but for a short time that we shall need this vigilance, and then life will cease. For the rest, why should we hold this to be difficult? If it be according to nature, rejoice in it, and it will become easy for you. If it be contrary to nature, search out what suits your nature, and follow it diligently, even though it be attended with no glory. For every man will be forgiven for seeking his own proper good. Consider whence each thing came, of what it was compounded, into what it will be changed, how it will be with it when changed, and that it will suffer no evil. As to those who offend me, let me consider, first, how I am related to mankind, that we are formed, the one for the other, and that, in another respect, I was set over them as the ram over the flock, and the bull over the herd. Consider yet more deeply, thus, there is either an empire of atoms or an intelligent nature governing the whole. If the latter, the inferior beings are created for the superior, and the superior for each other. Secondly, consider what manner of men they are who are at table, in bed, or elsewhere, and especially by what principles they hold themselves bound. and with what arrogance they entertain them. Thirdly, if they act rightly, we ought not to take it amiss, and if not rightly, manifestly they do so without intention and in ignorance. For no soul is willingly deprived of truth, or of the faculty of treating every man as he deserves. Accordingly, men are grieved to be called unjust, ungrateful, greedy, and sinners against their neighbors, in short. Fourthly, you yourself do often sin, and are no better than another. And if you abstain from certain sins, still you have the disposition to commit them, even if through cowardice, fear for your character, or other meanness you might hold back. Fifthly, you cannot even be perfectly sure that wrong has been done, for many things admit of justification, and, generally speaking, a man must have learned much before he can pronounce surely upon the conduct of others. Sixthly, when you are vexed or worried too much, remember that man's life is but for a moment, and that in a little while we shall all be laid to rest. Seventhly, it is not the acts of others that disturb us. Their actions reside in their own souls. It is our own opinions that disturb us. Away with them, then. Will that you entertain no thought of calamity befallen you, and the anger is gone. But how can we remove them? By reasoning that there is no dishonor. For, if you hold not that dishonor alone is evil, verily you must fall into many crimes. You may become a robber, or any sort of villain. Eighthly, how much worse evils we suffer from anger and grief about certain things than from the things themselves about which these passions arise. Ninthly, meekness is invincible if it be genuine, without simper or hypocrisy. For what can the most insolent of men do to you, if you persist in civility towards him? And, if occasion offers, admonish him gently and deliberately. Show him the better way at the very moment that he is endeavoring to harm you. Nay, my son, we were born for something better. No hurt can come to me. It is yourself you hurt, my son. And point out to him delicately, and as a general principle, how the matter stands, that bees and other gregarious animals do not act like him. But this all must be done without irony or reproach, rather with loving kindness and no bitterness of spirit, not as though you were reading him a lesson or seeking admiration from any bystander, but as if you designed your remarks for him alone, though others may be present. Remember these 9 precepts as gifts received from the Muses, and begin now to be human for the rest of your life. Beware equally of being angry with men and of flattering them. Both are unsocial and lead to mischief. In all anger, recollect that wrath is not becoming to a man, but that meekness and gentleness, as they are more human, are also more manly. Strength and nerves and courage are the portion of the meek and gentle man, not of the irascible and impatient one. For the nearer a man attains to freedom from passion, the nearer he comes to strength. A weak man in grief is like a weak man in anger. Both are hurt, and both give way. If you want a 10th gift from the leader of the Muses, take this. To expect the wicked not to sin is madness. It is to expect an impossibility. But to allow them to injure others, and to forbid them to injure you, is foolish and tyrannical. There are 4 states of the soul against which you must continually and especially be on your guard, and which, when detected, should be effaced by remarking thus of each: this thought is unnecessary. This one tends to social disillusion. You could not say this from your heart, and to speak otherwise than from the heart you must regard as the most absurd conduct. And, fourthly, whatever causes self-reproach is an overpowering or subjection of the diviner part within you to the less honorable and mortal part, the body, and to its grosser tendencies. The cereal and igneous parts of which you are compounded, although they naturally tend upwards, nevertheless obey the general law of the universe, and are retained here in composition. The earthy and humid parts of you, though they naturally tend downwards, are nevertheless supported and remain where they are, although not in their natural situation. Thus the elements, wheresoever placed by the superior power, obey the whole, waiting till the signal shall sound again for their dissolution. Is it not grievous that the intellectual part alone should be disobedient and fret at its function? Yet is no violence done to it, nothing imposed contrary to its nature. Still, it is impatient and tends to opposition. For all its tendencies towards injustice, debauchery, wrath, sorrows, and fears are so many departures from nature. And when the soul frets at any particular event, it is deserting its appointed station. It is formed for holiness and piety toward God, no less than for justice. These last are branches of social goodness even more venerable than the practice of justice. He whose aim in life is not always one and the same cannot himself be one in the same through his whole life. But singleness of aim is not sufficient unless you consider also what that aim ought to be. For as there is not agreement of opinion regarding all those things which are reckoned good by the majority, but only as regards some of them, such as are of public utility, so your aim should be social and political. For he alone who directs all his personal aims to such an end can reach a uniform course of conduct, and thus be ever the same man. Remember the country mouse and the town mouse, and how the latter feared and trembled. Socrates called the maxims of the vulgar hobgoblins, bogies to frighten children. The Spartans, at their public shows, set seats for strangers in the shade, but sat themselves where they found room. Socrates once made this excuse for not going to Perdiccas upon his invitation, lest I should come to the worst of all ends, by receiving favors which I could not return. In the writings of the Ephesians there is a precept, frequently to call to remembrance some of those who cultivated virtue of old. The Pythagoreans recommended that we should look at the heavens in the morning, to put us in mind of beings that go on doing their proper work, uniformly and continuously, and of their order, purity, and naked for simplicity, for there is no veil upon a star. Think of Socrates clad in a skin, when Xanthippe had taken his cloak and gone out, and what he said to his friends, who were ashamed, and would have left him when they saw him dressed in such an extraordinary fashion. In writing and reading, you must be led before you can lead. Much more is this so in life. Yourself a slave, your speech cannot be free. And my heart laughed within me. Virtue herself they blame with harshest words. In truth, to look for figs in winter is madness, and so it is to long for a child that may no longer be yours. Epictetus once said that when you kiss your child, you should whisper within yourself, "Tomorrow, perhaps, he may die." People might respond, "Ill-omened words." The words, he says, have no ill omen, but simply indicate an act of nature. Is it of evil omen to say the corn is reaped? The green grape, the ripe cluster, the dried grape are all changes, not into nothing, but into that which is not at present. No man can rob you of your liberty of action. This said, too, by Epictetus. He tells us also that we must find out the true art of ascending, and in treating of our impulses, he says that we must be vigilant in restraining them, that they may act with proper reservation, with public spirit, with due sense of proportion. He also says that we should refrain utterly from sensual passion, and not be restive in matters where we have no control. The contention is not about any chance matter, said he, but as to whether we are insane or sane. What do you desire, says Socrates, to have the souls of rational beings or of irrational? Rational. Rational of what kind? Virtuous or vicious? Virtuous. Why then do you not seek after such souls? Because we have them already. Why then do you fight and stand at variance? End of the 11th book. Book 12. All that you desire to compass by devious means is yours already, if you will but freely take it. That is to say, if you will leave behind you all that is past, commit the future to Providence, and regulate the present in piety and justice. In piety, that you may love your appointed lot, for nature gave it to you, and you to it. In justice, that you may speak the truth without constraint or guile, that you may do what is lawful and proper, that you may not be hindered by the wickedness of others, or by their opinion, or their talk, or by any sensation of this poor surrounding body, for the part that concerned may look to that. If then, now that you are near your exit, setting behind you all other things, you will hold alone in reverence your ruling part, the Spirit divine within you, if you will cease to dread the end of life, but rather fear to miss the beginning of life according to nature, you will be a man, worthy of the ordered universe that produced you. You will cease to be a stranger in your own country, gaping in wonder at every daily happening, caught up by this trifle or by that. God beholds all souls bare and stripped of these corporeal vessels, husk and refuse. By his intelligence alone, he touches that only which has been instilled by him and has emanated from himself. If you would but inure yourself to do the like, you would be eased of many a torment. For he who regards not the surrounding flesh will not waste his leisure in thinking about vesture, house, or fame, or other mere external furniture or accoutrement. Three parts there are, of which you are compact: body, soul, and intelligence. Of these, the first two are yours, in so far as they may have your care. The third only is properly your own. And if you will cast away from yourself, that is from your mind, all that others do or say, all that you yourself have done or said, all your fears for the future, all the uncontrollable accompaniments of the body that envelops you, and of its congenital soul, and all that is whirled in the besieging vortex that races outside of you, so that your intellectual power, made pure, and set above the accidents of fate, may live its own life in freedom, just, resigned, veracious. If, I repeat to you, you cast out from your soul all comes of excessive attachment, either to the past or to the future, then you will become, in the words of Empedocles, a faultless sphere rejoiced in endless rest. You will study to live the only life there is to live, to wit, the present, and you will be able, till death shall come, to spend what remains of life in noble tranquility, at peace with the spirit within. I have wondered often how it comes that, while every man loves himself beyond all others, yet he holds his own opinion of himself in less esteem than the opinion of others. Yet, if a god or some wise teacher came and ordered a man to conceive and design nothing which he would not utter the moment it occurred to him, he would not abide the ordeal for a single day. Thus we stand in greater awe of our neighbor's opinion of us than we do of our own. How can it be that the gods, who have ordered all things well for man's advantage, overlooked one thing only, that is, that some of the best of mankind, who have held the closest relations with things divine, and by pious works and holy ministry become intimate with the divinity, once dead, should arise no more, but be altogether extinguished? If this be truly so, be well assured that if it ought to have been otherwise, they would have made it otherwise. Had it been right, it would have been practicable, and had it been according to nature, nature would have effected it. From its not being so, if it really be not so, be persuaded that it ought not to have been. You see that in debating this matter, you are pleading a point of justice with the gods. Now we would not thus plead with the gods, were they not perfectly good and just. And if they are so, they have left nothing unjustly and unreasonably neglected in their administration. Essay even tasks that you despair of executing. The left hand, which in other things is of little value for want of use, yet holds the bridle more firmly than the right, for in this it has practice. Consider also how death ought to find you, both as to body and as to soul. Think of the shortness of life, of the eternities before and after, and of the infirmity of all material things. Contemplate the fundamental causes stripped of disguises. Think about what pain is, what pleasure is, what death is, and so also with fame. Consider how many are themselves the causes of all the disquiet that they suffer, how no man may be hindered by another, how all is matter of opinion. In the use of principles, we should be like the pugilist rather than the swordsman. For when the latter drops the sword which he uses, he is undone. But the former has his hand always by him, and needs but to wield it. Consider well also the nature of things, distinguishing between matter, cause, and purpose. What a glorious power is given to man, never to do any action of which God will not approve, and to welcome whatever God appoints for him. As to what happens in the course of nature, the gods are not to be blamed. They never do wrong, willingly or unwillingly. Neither are men to be blamed, for they do no wrong willingly. Therefore, there is none to blame. How ridiculous, and how like a foreigner, is he who is surprised at anything which happens in life. There is either a fatal necessity, an unalterable order, or a placable providence, or a blind confusion without a governor. If there be an unalterable necessity, why strive against it? If there be a providence admitting of propitiation, make yourself worthy of the divine aid. If there be an ungoverned confusion, be comforted, seeing that in this tempest you have within yourself a guiding intelligence. And if the wave should carry you away, let it carry away the carcass and the animal life, for the intellectual part of you it will not carry away. If the light of a lamp shine and lose not its radiance until it be extinguished, shall truth, justice, and temperance be extinguished in you before your own extinction? When you have the impression that a man has sinned, say to yourself, how do I know that this is sin? And if he has sinned, consider that he stands self-condemned, and thus, as it were, has torn his own face. He that would wish the wicked not to sin is like one who would have the fig tree not have juice in its figs, would have infants not to cry, horses not neigh, and other inevitable things not happen. What shall the wicked man do, having a wicked disposition? If you are so keen, cure it. And if a thing be not becoming, do it not. If not true, say it not. Endeavor always to see in everything what it is that causes your impression, and unfold it by distinguishing the cause, the matter, the relation to other things, and the period within which it must cease to exist. Perceive at last that there is within you something better and more divine than the immediate cause of your sensations of pleasure and pain. Something, in short, beyond the strings which move a puppet. What is now my thought? Is it fear, suspicion, lust, or any other such passion? In the first place, let nothing be done at random or without an object. In the second, let your object never be other than the common good. Yet a little, and you shall be no more, nor shall any of these things remain which you now behold, nor any of those who are now living. It is the nature of all things to change, to turn, and to corrupt, in order that other things may, in their course, spring out of them. Reflect that everything is matter of opinion, and opinion rests with yourself. Suppress then your opinion what time you will, and like one who has doubled the cape and reached the bay, you will have calm and stillness everywhere, never a wave. Any one natural operation, ending at its proper time, suffers no ill by ceasing, nor does the agent therein suffer any ill by its ceasing. In like manner, as to the whole series of actions which is life, if it ends in its season, it suffers no ill by ceasing, nor is he who thus completes his series in any evil case. The season and the term are assigned by nature, sometimes even by your own nature, as in old age, but always by the nature of the whole, by the interchange of whose parts the universe still remains fresh and in its bloom. Now, That is always good and seasonable, which is advantageous to the nature of the whole. Wherefore the ceasing of life cannot be evil to the individual. There is no turpitude in it, since it is beyond our power, and contains nothing contrary to the common advantage. Nay, it is good, since it is seasonable and advantageous to the whole, and congruent with the order of the universe. Thus, also, he is led by God who goes the same way with God, and that by like inclination. Have these three thoughts always at hand. First, as to your action, do nothing inconsiderately, or otherwise than justice herself would have acted. As for external events, they either happen by chance or by providence. Now, no man should quarrel with chance or censure providence. Second, examine what each thing is, from its seed to its quickening, and from its quickening to its death. Of what materials it is composed, and into what it will be resolved. Third, reflect that you could be raised on high, and from thence behold all human affairs. You would discern their great variety, conscious at the same time of the crowds of serial and ethereal inhabitants around us. But were you so raised ever so often, you would always see the same things, all uniform, and of brief duration. Can we set our pride on such matters? It is said, "Cast away opinion, and you are saved." Who then hinders you from casting it away? When you fret at anything, you have forgotten that all happens in accordance with the nature of the universe, and that the wrong done was another's. This too, that whatever happens has happened, and will happen, and is now happening everywhere. You have also forgotten how great the bond is between any man and all the human race, a bond not of blood and seed, but of common intelligence. You have forgotten that the intelligence of every man is divine, one which is an efflux from God. Also, that no man is proprietor of anything. His children, his body, his very life are given to him by God. You have forgotten, too, that everything is matter of opinion, and that it is the present moment only that one can live or lose. Bring to frequent recollection those who have grieved about anything too much, those who have been preeminent in the extreme of glory or misfortune, in feuds or other circumstances of fate. Then, stop and ask, where are they all now? Smoke and ashes, and an old tale, or perhaps not even a tale. Pass them all in review. Fabius Catilinus in the country, Lucius Lupus in his gardens, Stertinius at Baiae, Tiberius at Capreae, Vellius Rufus, and, in fine, all eminence attended with the high regard of men. How cheap is all that is so eagerly pursued, and how much better does it become a philosopher to show himself, in the part of the material world allotted to him, just, temperate, and obedient to the gods, and this with simplicity. For most intolerable of all is the pride of false humility. To those who ask, where have you seen the gods, and how assured yourself of their existence that you worship them? To them, make this reply. First, they are visible, even to the eye. Again, my own soul I cannot see, and yet I reverence it. Thus too with regards to the gods. I continually feel their power, and so I know that they exist, and I worship them. The safety of life is to see the whole nature of everything, and to discern the matter and the form of its constitution. Also, to do justice with all your heart, and to speak the truth. What remains but to enjoy life, adding one good to another, so as not to lose the smallest interval? There is but one light of the sun, although it be scattered upon walls and hills, and a myriad of other objects. There is but one common substance, although it be divided among 10,000 bodies, having as many different qualities. There is but one soul, though it be distributed among countless different natures and individual forms. There is but one intelligent spirit, though it may seem to be divided. The other parts of these individuals of which we have spoken, such as breath and matter, are devoid of perception and of mutual affection. Yet even they are held together by the intelligent spirit, and gravitate together. But intelligence has a special tendency to its kind, and unites therewith, and the community of feeling is not broken. What do you desire? To live on? Or is it to feel or to desire? To grow and to decay again? To speak or think? Which of all these seems worthy to be desired? And if each of all of them is despicable, proceed to the last that remains, to follow reason and God. Now, It is repugnant to reverence for reason and for God to grieve at the loss by death of these other despicable things. In truth, how small a part of the boundless immensity of the ages is allotted to each of us, and presently that will vanish in eternity. How little is ours of the universal substance, how little of the universal spirit. On what a little clod of the whole earth do we creep. Considering all this, reckon nothing great except to act as your nature leads you, and to endure what universal nature brings to pass. And so I ask, how is it with your ruling part? On this, all depends. All other things, within or without our control, are but corpses, dust, and smoke. This most of all must rouse you to despise death, that even those who held pleasure to be good and pain to be evil nevertheless despised it. To him who holds that alone to be good which comes in proper season, who cares not whether he has acted oftener or less often according to right reason, to whom it makes no difference whether he behold the universe for a longer or shorter time. For this man, death also has no terror. Finally, you have lived, O man, as a citizen of this great city. Of what consequence to you whether for 5 years or for 3? What comes by law is fair to all. Where then is the calamity if you are sent out of the city by no tyrant or unjust judge, but nature herself, who at first introduced you, just as the praetor who engaged the actor again dismisses him from the stage? But, say you, I have not spoken my 5 acts, but only 3. I say, true, but in life 3 acts make up the play. For he sets the end who is responsible for its composition at the first, and for its present dissolution. You are responsible for neither. Depart then graciously, for he who dismisses you is gracious. The End.